Then, one morning, he told Clara over breakfast, "My dear, I have bad news. The company has been hit badly. I lost a major contract." Clara dropped her fork. "What? How much are we talking about?" "Almost everything," he said slowly. "We might have to make some changes." Her eyes widened, not in sympathy, but in disbelief. "What do you mean changes?" "I might have to sell a few properties, maybe the Range Rover, maybe even the mansion in Banana Island." The look on her face said it all. Money. Power. Status. That was the word of Chief Adetola Williams, a man whose name alone opened doors. He was one of the richest men in Lagos, a self-made billionaire whose real estate empire stretched from Victoria Island to Abuja. He had everything a man could ever want: cars that shimmered like liquid silver, houses that looked like palaces, and a wife everyone envied. Her name was Clara, beautiful, elegant, and always dressed in diamonds. When they appeared together at events, people whispered, "God really blessed that man." But lately, Chief Adetola's heart had grown heavy. Because blessings, he discovered, can sometimes feel like burdens. It started with small things, moments that made him question everything. Clara had stopped saying we. She only said me. When he tried to talk about giving to charity, she would scoff. "Why waste money on strangers when we can buy a new car?" When he came home tired from business meetings, she rarely asked how his day went. Her first question was always, did the deal go through? And when it didn't, she would sigh and roll her eyes, saying, "You're too soft, that's why people take advantage of you." Each time she spoke, it wasn't love he heard, it was calculation. And so, one quiet night, while sitting alone in his study, Chief Adetola whispered to himself, "I need to know. Does she love me, or my money?" That thought became a fire in his mind. A plan began to form, a dangerous plan that would test the very core of their marriage. A month later, he started putting his plan into motion. He began by quietly moving large sums of money from his company accounts into a private trust. Then, one morning, he told Clara over breakfast, "My dear, I have bad news. The company has been hit badly. I lost a major contract." Clara dropped her fork. "What? How much are we talking about?" "Almost everything," he said slowly. "We might have to make some changes." Her eyes widened, not in sympathy, but in disbelief. "What do you mean changes?" "I might have to sell a few properties, maybe the Range Rover, maybe even the mansion in Banana Island." The look on her face said it all. Shock turned into panic. Panic turned into anger. "Sell? Adetola, are you mad? How will people see me? What will I drive?" He lowered his gaze. "Clara, we'll be fine. We still have enough to live modestly." But modestly was not a word she understood. That very week, he told her he had sold 2 of their cars. The next week, the house staff was reduced. The private chef, the driver, the gardeners, all gone. Clara's anger grew with each passing day. "How could you let this happen?" she would shout. "Do you know what people are saying about us? My friends are laughing at me." Adetola remained calm, watching her with quiet sadness. Every word she spoke was proof of what he feared. When he told her they had to move to a smaller house in Suralere, she nearly fainted. Suralere? With ordinary people? Never. But they moved into a modest bungalow with peeling paint and old furniture. And just like that, their lives changed. The woman who once woke up to breakfast in bed now complained about the heat, the noise, and the dust. The woman who once smiled for photographs now frowned at her husband every morning. In that same house lived one other person, Damina, their maid. She was quiet, respectful, and always smiling despite her humble background. When Chief told her, "Amina, I might not be able to pay you this month," she only bowed her head and said softly, "Sir, It's okay. You've been good to me. I'll still do my work. That one sentence struck him deeply. While Clara sobbed and complained, Amina kept the house running. She cooked, cleaned, and even ironed his shirts when Clara refused to help. She would knock on his door gently and say, "Sir, you haven't eaten since morning. Please eat something." He began to notice her kindness in the little things, the way she covered his chair with a cloth so it wouldn't stain, the way she prayed quietly for him every night when she thought he wasn't listening. One afternoon, as he sat by the window, lost in thought, Amina came to him with a bowl of rice. "Sir, I know you are sad, but don't let worry kill you. God sees everything," she said. Her voice was soft, but her words carried weight. He smiled faintly. "Thank you, Amina." In that moment, something shifted in him, a sense of warmth he hadn't felt in years. Meanwhile, Clara's bitterness grew darker. She started going out late, saying she was meeting friends who could help. But Adetola knew what that meant. One evening, he saw her stepping out of a black SUV, the car of one of his business associates. When he confronted her, she snapped. "Don't you dare question me, Adetola. You can't even feed me properly. What right do you have to talk?" He stood there, silent, staring at the woman he once called his queen. That night, he sat on the edge of the bed, watching her scroll through her phone, ignoring him completely. In his heart, he whispered, "So this is who you truly are." Weeks turned into months. The distance between them became a wall. Clara no longer cooked, no longer smiled, no longer said good morning. Instead, she complained about how boring and poor life had become. One day, she dropped her wedding ring on the table and said coldly, "I can't do this anymore. I can't live like a beggar." "Clara, please," he begged. "It's just for a while." She laughed bitterly. "Keep your promises, Adetola. I'm done living with a failure." She packed her bags and left, stepping into a car driven by another man. As her taillights disappeared into the distance, Amina walked into the room quietly. She saw him sitting there, head bowed, tears in his eyes. "Sir," she whispered, "everything will be okay." He looked up at her and nodded slowly. He had his answer. The test was over. And though his heart was broken, he finally knew the truth. For the first time in years, Chief Adetola sat alone in his living room, staring at the empty couch where Clara once sat. The scent of her perfume still lingered faintly in the air, a cruel reminder of the woman who had once called him my king. Now, she was gone. Gone with another man. A man who, unlike him, or so she thought, still had wealth to flaunt. The silence pressed on him like a heavy fog. He had lost something, but he wasn't sure what hurt more, the betrayal, or the confirmation that his fears were right all along. He sighed deeply, rubbing his chest. Everything inside him felt hollow. But as he sat there, lost in thought, a quiet voice broke the silence. "Sir, should I warm your food?" He turned slowly. It was Amina, standing at the doorway, hands folded, her eyes full of concern. He tried to smile. "I'm not hungry." She hesitated, then stepped closer. "You haven't eaten all day. Please, sir. Even strong men must eat." There was something about her tone, gentle but firm, that reached him in a way no one else's words could. He nodded slightly. "All right, Amina." She smiled faintly, then disappeared into the kitchen. A few minutes later, she returned with a simple meal, boiled yam and stew. No luxury, no silver trays, just food made with care. He took the plate from her and whispered, "Thank you." As he ate, he noticed her sweeping the floor quietly, humming an old Yoruba hymn. There was peace in the sound, the kind of peace he hadn't felt in years. He realized then that wealth had made him blind, blind to the beauty of small kindnesses, blind to people who truly cared. Days passed. Clara never called. Never texted. The world outside moved on as if nothing happened. But inside that modest house, something was changing. Amina became more than just a maid. She became the reason the house still felt like home. When he looked sad, she found ways to make him smile. When he fell sick one weekend, she stayed by his side all night, cooling his forehead with a damp cloth and whispering prayers. "Why are you doing all this?" he asked one night, his voice weak. She looked at him softly. "Because you are a good man, sir. Money or no money." Her words struck his soul like a drumbeat. For so long, he had believed his worth was tied to his wealth. But here was someone who saw beyond the fine suits and the expensive watches, someone who saw him. Meanwhile, somewhere across town, Clara's new life glittered, but only on the surface. She had moved into a luxury apartment with her new man, Mr. Collins, a wealthy importer. At first, everything was dazzling: champagne dinners, weekend trips, gold necklaces. She posted pictures online, flaunting her new life for everyone to see. Finally, she told herself, "I'm living the life I deserve." But beneath the smiles and filters, cracks began to show. Collins was not the charming gentleman she thought he was. He was controlling, arrogant, and distant. He backed orders, treated her like a possession. One afternoon, Clara appeared at the gate. Amina was sweeping when she saw her. The once glamorous woman was barely recognizable, her hair unkempt, her clothes wrinkled, her eyes swollen from crying. "Please," Clara said weakly, "I need to see my husband." Amina froze. Then she nodded slowly and went inside. "Sir, someone is here to see you," she said softly. When Adetola stepped out, his breath caught in his throat. There she was, the woman who had once called him useless, standing in the dust, trembling. "Adetola," she cried, falling to her knees. "Please, forgive me. I was wrong. Collins, he left me. He used me. I have nowhere else to go." He stood still, silent. All the pain, all the humiliation, all the nights he had suffered, flashed through his mind. "Amina," he said quietly, "bring her a chair." But Clara shook her head. "No, I don't need comfort. I just need forgiveness. Please, I'll do anything to come back. I'll change. I'll..." He held up a hand. "Clara, stop." His voice was calm, but his eyes were cold. "Do you remember when I begged you to stay? When I told you it was just a phase?" Tears streamed down her face. I thought you had failed." He nodded slowly. "You were right about one thing: I did fail. But not in business. I failed in choosing who to trust." Her cries grew louder. "Please, don't say that." He looked at her one last time and said quietly, "I forgive you, Clara. But the man you left behind no longer exists." Then he turned and walked back inside, leaving her kneeling at the gate. Amina stood silently, watching as Clara broke down in tears. Later that night, Adetola sat by the window, looking out at the stars. Amina came to him with tea, her step soft and careful. "Are you all right, sir?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "For the first time in a long time, I am." He turned to her, his eyes warm. "You know, Amina, you've shown me more love than money ever could." She lowered her gaze shyly. "Sir, I only did what anyone with a heart should do." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time I start listening to my heart again." That night, for the first time in years, Chief Adetola slept peacefully, not as a billionaire, not as a husband betrayed, but as a man who had found truth in simplicity. The sun rose gently over the quiet neighborhood. Its golden light filtered through the curtains of the small house, casting a soft glow across the room where Chief Adetola sat, lost in thought. He sipped from a cup of tea that Amina had prepared, the steam curling upward like the breath of morning itself. A faint smile crossed his lips as he listened to the sound of her singing in the kitchen, a song about gratitude, about faith, about hope in hard times. It amazed him how she could still sing when life had given her so little. While his wife had turned her love into a trade, Amina gave hers freely, in small acts of kindness, in the gentle way she spoke, in how she cared for him even when she believed he was poor. He looked around the room, modest, quiet, peaceful. Then he looked down at the plain wristwatch on his arm and chuckled softly. "It's time," he whispered. That afternoon, he asked Amina to sit with him. She hesitated at first, unsure why her employer looked so serious. "Sir, is everything all right?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "Amina, there's something you deserve to know." She sat down, clutching the edge of her wrapper, eyes full of concern. He took a deep breath. "Do you remember the day my wife left? When I told you I had lost everything?" "Yes, sir," she said softly. "You said your businesses failed." He smiled faintly. "That was a lie." Her eyes widened. "A lie?" He nodded. "I never lost anything. In fact, my wealth is untouched. Every car, every company, every estate still belongs to me." Amina froze, unable to speak. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. "I did it," he continued quietly, "to test the truth around me. I wanted to know who loved me, and who only loved my money." Tears welled in his eyes as he spoke. "My wife failed that test. She left the moment the gold disappeared. But you," he paused, looking at her with deep emotion. "You stayed. You cared for me. You showed me love when I had nothing to give." Amina's hands trembled. "Sir, I don't understand. You mean, all this while, you were still a billionaire?" He nodded again. "Yes, Amina. Every single naira. I simply chose to live without it for a time." She covered her mouth in disbelief. "Then why are you telling me this now?" He looked at her, his eyes gentle but steady. "Because, Amina, I don't want to live a lie anymore. I've seen enough betrayal, enough greed, enough fake smiles to last a lifetime. What I found in you, your kindness, your humility, your loyalty, that's what I want for the rest of my life." He stood up slowly and took a small velvet box from his pocket. Amina gasped as he opened it. Inside was a simple gold ring that glowed softly in the afternoon light. Her breath caught. "Sir, what are you?" He knelt before her. "Amina," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "I have lived among diamonds, but none of them ever shone as bright as your heart. Will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes instantly. She stood frozen, staring down at him, her employer, the man she thought she was only serving out of duty. "Sir, I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say yes," he said softly, smiling. "Not because of the money, because of love. Because you see me for who I am." Her lips quivered as tears streamed down her face. "I'm just a maid," she said. "I have nothing to give you." He rose to his feet and gently took her hands. "You gave me something no money can buy, peace. And that's everything I've ever needed." A moment passed, quiet, tender, sacred. Then she nodded slowly. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." The following week, the news broke like wildfire. Billionaire Chief Adetola to wed his former maid. It was everywhere, newspapers, radio stations, social media. People gossiped, people laughed, people doubted. But those who knew Adetola closely understood that this was no ordinary man, and no ordinary story. And while the world talked, one person could not rest, Clara. When she read the headlines, her world shattered. She dropped the newspaper and trembled. "No, it can't be." Her mind spun as she realized the truth. The man she left had never truly lost anything. All the wealth she thought was gone still existed. She had abandoned him not in poverty, but in disguise. The reality hit her like a thunderbolt. She remembered the day she mocked him, the insults she hurled at him, the moment she walked out without looking back. Tears filled her eyes. Oh God, what have I done? In desperation, she returned once again to the same gate she once stood before, but this time, with shame burning in her heart. The guard stopped her at the mansion. I need to see Chief Adetola, she pleaded. Please. Tell him Clara is here. When they delivered the message, Adetola hesitated for a long moment, then nodded. Let her in, he said quietly. When Clara walked into the grand sitting room, she froze. The luxury, the gold, the chandeliers, it was all still there. Nothing was ever gone. Adetola entered, wearing a crisp white agbada, calm and regal as ever. Amina stood beside him, graceful in a simple gown. Clara's knees buckled. You never lost your wealth, she whispered. No, he said, his voice steady. She fell to her knees. Adetola, please, forgive me. I was blinded by greed. I didn't know what I had. Please, take me back. He looked at her for a long time, his face unreadable. Then he said softly, I forgave you long ago, Clara. But forgiveness does not always mean return. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. Please, don't do this. He turned to Amina and took her hand gently. I have already chosen my path. Clara's sobs filled the hall. She watched helplessly as the man she once called hers walked away with another, a woman she had always treated as a servant. The wedding came quietly, simple, elegant, sincere. There were no lavish displays, no noisy crowds, just family, close friends, and blessings. When Adetola looked at Amina that day, standing in white, he felt something no mansion or money could ever give him, peace. As they exchanged vows, he whispered softly in her ear, you stood by me in the dark. Now, you will share my light. She smiled through her tears. When they walked out of the church, hand in hand, the sun broke through the clouds, golden, bright, and pure. And for the first time in a long, long time, Chief Adetola felt truly rich. Not in wealth, but in love.